This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found on Gadget Geeks show number 443, recorded on April 30th, 2020. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studio on a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska, Mike. Since we are home, many of us are home. I don't know what it is, but I'm kind of enjoying, like, when it's nice, we get outside. Like,
it's so easy, right? Like, there's no excuse to not be outside. Just like right now, there's really no excuse for a not well-tamed yard. Same for being outside. And let me tell you, with kids, especially young boys, there's no better saving grace than to have great weather on a day where I can go outside, let them run around, and I can get some work done while they're doing that. We have been soaking up this weather as much as we can. And it has, I want to say, Jim, for Nebraska, this might be the longest streak of just gorgeous weather. Not too hot, not cold. It's been a breath of fresh air after some weird early spring cold weather that we were having.
Well, I'm finding I'm just more sensitive to the weather than I was before because I can get out in it. Like when when I was in the office, I'm in the office. It's not like I could just pop outside, I guess I could, but I never really thought of it that way. Now I'm like, man, it's going to be nice this afternoon. I'm going to rearrange my schedule so I can get some outside time. Nathaniel, have you noticed like you're just kind of more aware of like nice days than you were before?
Definitely. I mean, we have a window that I can look out and I see the the neighborhood, and it's closer. It just feels like the outside is closer. So getting up to go out, a couple blocks, walk around with the dog, it seems less of a disruption than at work where you have to get up from your desk and go, So I try to get out more. I always do a walk in the morning before I get settled and sit down at the computer, and because I know I'm not going to get up for a while.
Brian, have you noticed that? Are you getting outside anymore?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the weather's been pretty crappy here in New Jersey. But on nice days, I get out and try to walk for 45 minutes at least to an hour to get that walk in. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it's been one of the benefits. It's been a huge benefit for me, just of this being kind of in this lockdown or work from home or shelter or whatever you want to call it. It is, I do these just trips around the block, and we take a longer walk in a secluded area every day, my daughter and I, and it's just been great. It's like I kind of feel more in tune to every day as opposed to all of a sudden it's Friday.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, now preparing, all my meals, so I have much more control over caloric intake as well, which has been good for me as well. I'm in the process of dropping some weight, which over the last couple of months.
Well, good for you. That hasn't been the case for everybody. Like, or people are saying it's the COVID-19, that's going on there.
They need to do social distancing from the refrigerator. Is that it?
Brian, I've been the same way. I've lost 10 pounds since March. Yeah. I'm just eating less snacks. There's not donuts. There's not, muffins and cupcakes and treats and.
The teacher's lounge is the worst, right?
Yeah.
I have a bad habit of getting out for lunch and not going home or not doing leftovers and not doing that. First of all, it saves a bunch of money. I was shocked how much money I was spending on lunches, even if I do eat at work or grab some in there. And then number two, the weight has been not that bad. Now I can drink more beer because I'm not taking in those calories with with the food. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I'm saving by eating. We have a cafeteria and it's pretty reasonable, but even at maybe $10 a day by the time I buy breakfast and I buy lunch, that adds up at $50 a week, and it's $200 a month, and all of a sudden you kind of go, wow. Whoa. Yeah, no, right on when you start adding up that way. So there has been some positive benefits to that as the work style has changed, and I've tried to take advantage of some of those. I've mentioned this before. These little micro workouts. So where I get up, I have a pull-up bar down here, and I just grab that and do a couple pull-ups, walk away, do something else, come back, do some push-ups, go out for a walk around the block. So instead of one big workout, trying to spread that out throughout the course of the day, just seems to make it a little more reasonable. My trainer has said, hey, at 50, at my age, doesn't matter if you get a 60-minute workout in or 6 10-minute workouts in, it's the same thing. So trying to just chunk those down into smaller blocks. And so for me, it's actually been really good.
Yeah, it seems that the research is saying it's just important to keep moving, and
Right.
it does make a difference. Sometimes the intensity, but just that you keep moving.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's changed a lot of things. We're going to talk a little bit about that here just in a little bit, but it's just changed so many things. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. We'll remind individuals, if you want to listen to the show and download it off our mobile app, maybe when we get to travel again, it's the best way to listen to the show on the road because it streams in and it's super easy and convenient. HomeGadgetGeeks.com. Maybe download that to your phone just as an emergency on that time we do get to travel, and you can have it available as well. We have a brand new show schedule site as well out at Eventbrite. So if you go to theaverageguy.eventbrite.com, you can see what's coming up next week. Mike, you mentioned the lawn. I applied fertilizer. We got 2 days of rain, perfect rain. It came and it watered it in, and now my lawn is in like 3 days. Whew. And so I got some mowing to do. Dave McCabe is coming on next week to talk a little bit about what he's doing on his lawn. But I'm to the spot. I think I'm gonna have to start mowing every 3 days, which being home's not a bad thing, right?
No, exactly. Get out on the lawnmower. I felt so bad. We had the chemical guy come today, and I didn't realize he was here. Well, we have a doggy door. And so all of a sudden I hear PD fire off. I'm on a call, actually. I'm like, oh, 1 second. I ran upstairs, and my dog had cornered the guy in the corner of our backyard, and the guy was just standing there. And, Pete's a pretty nice small dog, but, oh, man, he was just letting him have it. I felt terrible. I'm so sorry. I took him inside, and, man, it was an awkward moment. But Petey was not happy to have a stranger all of a sudden in his backyard without me telling him he was going to be there.
Brian, you mentioned you've been having some bad weather. Has that slowed down? Are you a lawnmower? Do you have to go out and get or do you have it done for you?
I have it done for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have the Mario Andretti of lawn mowing.
Nice. Nathaniel, what about you? Do you got you're a couple weeks behind us.
Yeah,
right?
We're behind you. We've had cold weather. It's just starting to get nice occasionally, and then we got some rain. So I expect in the next week or so the grass will really kind of green up with some rain and warm weather. But I haven't mowed yet. Barely raked.
Yeah, we were that way just last week, and then of course we got some really good weather, and it seems like when that grass pops in the spring, it pops big time. And we hit that window. McCabe's out there measuring the temperature of his dirt to know when to apply. We're going to talk about that all next week. You're going to want to join us here for 444. But I'm not that sophisticated. I just put down some Scott's fertilizer, some stuff I bought pre-lockdown. Bought the whole summer's worth of chemicals, thank goodness. And then they're just sitting in the shed waiting to go. So we got that coming on next week. Last week, big thanks to Erin Lawrence, who joined us, and she always does a great job. And Erin's great to have on here. And we had a lot of great gadget talk. And so if you missed 442, you can go back and get that. Big thanks to Erin, who joined us. Tonight, we kind of have been planning the show for a month. That might be the longest I've ever planned a Home Gadget Geeks. We started talking about what are the effects. It actually came out of a conversation in another show we were having. Nathaniel said, oh, man, I am in the middle of this. And I thought, what have you learned? And so we started talking about some things, and this show was kind of born out of that. We're going to spend some time kind of tonight talking about the effects. How has it affected your area? So the guests we have on tonight all come in at education a little bit differently. And we're going to hear from them on how the COVID-19, how the coronavirus has kind of changed things for them and the impact it has. And then, gentlemen, I kind of want to ask you, what do you think as we get towards the end of the show? How do you think it's going to change things in the future? So that's kind of the agenda on the show. Tonight with us, Dr. Brian Friedlander is with us. He's a friend of the show, been on a couple times, talk about assistive tech and all the things that we have. Brian, welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks. Great to have you.
Great to be back.
Can you give us a 1 minute elevator pitch on you? What do you do? Where are you at? Who are you? Kind of a little bit of a background.
So I have a background, I have a PhD in psychology. I'm a psychologist, but I specialize in assistive technology, do a lot of consulting to K-12 and K-20. And as well, I'm a professor of education at the College St. Elizabeth, where I teach both undergrad and graduate courses in teacher education, special education, and assistive technology.
Perfect. You practiced that a few times. I think. Yeah. Nicely done. Nicely said. Nathaniel Lindley is with us. He comes at us from the other side of this equation on the hardware infrastructure, kind of making those things work. Nathaniel, one, welcome back. And then two, give us a little rundown on you as well.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm a technology supervisor and a medium-sized district here in Minnesota, about 8,400 students. And my role is operations technical side and coordinator of effort. So I work with district level technicians and building technicians and teachers and integrationists and media specialists, trying to kind of help keep things on the right track. So I get to dabble in a lot of different areas and try to learn quickly and solve problems, but I'm not a big specialist in any one area other than maybe the Google admin console. So a lot of problem solving, and I work with our assistive technology specialist. And what I'm seeing is this is changing a lot of stuff in technology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, good. We got a lot to talk about. Nathaniel, both you and Mike come at this too from a parenting, now homeschooling, taking care of the kids. Mike, yours a little younger, I think, than yours, Nathaniel. Mike, yours are young enough; they're not in school yet, but right, you're having to take care of them at home, handle this with work, right? This has changed your life a little bit, right?
It has, and we'll talk about it maybe a little bit later, but I have learned a lot. I was very gung-ho to get them in front of tech to help them. They started out with tech using Zoom, actually. They go to a Montessori school, and that school uses Zoom to do they do their morning, their morning routine, I guess, on Zoom. And I was very excited to get them in front of tech for other reasons. And I've really had to back off in a little ways, because a 2 and a 3-year-old, it had a different effect on them a little bit, with outside of the whole learning aspect, with just the addictive nature to that sort of stuff. So we'll get to that. It's been very interesting, because I want to obviously assist them as best as I can as a working parent who's trying to get work done and make sure they're still getting some education at home. But it's been a little bit different with a 2 and 3-year-old than I think it would be with older students. But I'm extremely interested to hear what Brian and Nathaniel have to say about that, because it's been a big change as a parent, because I obviously am not in the education background. I'm simply a guy working from home, trying to keep his kids educated and entertained and happy, while also trying to get work done myself. So it's been an interesting challenge for me.
Nathaniel, your kids are a little bit older, right?
Yeah, so I have an elementary, a 4th grader, and then I have 2 high schoolers.
Mm-hmm. How's that going so far?
It's they're doing very well, all things considered.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to, as a parent, you have to sort of adjust your expectations and what you see as effort and what you see as outcomes. And fortunately, their teachers are great and are really reasonable about setting expectations, making accommodations, being really clear. That's the biggest thing. The teachers that set the week and say, here's very clearly what's going to happen and what's required and what's optional. But it's hard, because the 4th grader, she needs support. She needs guidance, and just saying, okay, go do it in the corner isn't really effective.
Yeah, it's a big difference between educating at home and working from home. And I think we kind of approached it in some regards. We didn't know, nobody knew. And it was like, okay,
Right.
Maybe we can get some lessons plans and you can kind of do some school from home. And that was, using Zoom or having lesson plans that kind of work like it did in school, I think was that equivalent to, well, I'm just going to go home and do work. The enterprise did it pretty well. We've been doing it for a while. Right. This was the real first experiment for it to happen in education. Brian, for you, let's go back 7 or 8 weeks. How did things change for you? What was the immediate impact in your role and what you're doing when everybody went home?
Well, so I was actually teaching 2 classes online already, so not much change there. I did have 1 class which was hybrid, and so I had to move it over. But I think just generally, school districts didn't really have enough time to really plan for this event. How could they? And so teachers were thrown into this, kind of baptism by fire, and they had to do the best they could. And I think that's what's happening. I mean, if there's any silver lining, it's that teachers were thrown into this and they're kind of figuring it out. But it's been a challenge for, I would say, for some of the teachers who are not as technological. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out, whether you're in Moodle or, Google Classroom or, Microsoft Teams. There's just a lot of stuff. And, it's the technology. It's also the pedagogy, because that's going to change dramatically when you're in an online space as compared to when you're physically next to a student. And in my arena, I just some things I've been thinking about. I really feel that the special ed students are, many of them are not getting what they really need. I mean, the teachers are trying to do their best, but a lot of things are going by the wayside. And I suspect when this is all over, there'll be, I want to say, class action suits, or districts will be, I think parents will come back to the districts and say, my child lost so many hours of occupational therapy, one-on-one instruction for reading. How are we going to make this up in person? So there's been a lot of challenges, and I see it because I'm teaching some graduate courses where my students are teachers themselves, and they're trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I create like a whiteboard experience? How do I break off kids in groups? So there's the technical, but there's also the pedagogy. So it's a challenge. I'm sure, Nathaniel, you'll see it. You're getting a lot of that too.
I hear everything you're saying, and I see a tremendous effort to try to do their best on the part of the teachers and the specialists and the support staff. They make, if you're looking at the occupational therapy area, they're making videos of the teacher in their kitchen. This is how we are making this and this, and they're doing the best they can to make the content to get it to the kid. And then it's a real team putting it together in a way that the parent at home can try to support the kid the way a para did in the classroom, but it's not going to be the same. Right. It's not going to be as effective. But we're all in this together. So it's not negligence on the part of the district. And the teachers they're working with the best they have. And so I've been really impressed with the creativity and the flexibility of trying to get these services delivered remotely. And then the problem I've seen is some of the teachers who think that they can cover the same content and the same structure at the same pace that they're used to in person. Right. And that frustrates the teacher and the students and the parents. And so that teaching methodology shift and mindset change is a big part of what they're getting used to. And I think 3-4 weeks into it, I think they're starting to get the routines. And
and I know some of the undergrad feedback that we're getting at the college is that the faculty are giving the students more assignments and more writing assignments to sort of make up for that lack of time. And the students are having a very challenging time keeping up with the pace. So you're absolutely right. It's like, how do you balance out, how much time and students should be spending on certain things, so that, so it's been disproportionate amount of things to do. They seem too busy, too many tasks.
Well, I don't think anybody has the recipe for what's right.
No.
Some teacher might luckily hit on the right amount of stuff, too much, too little, others. And one of the challenges is getting the kids connected. Now in the special ed realm, you've got a smaller caseload that you're working with, and you're connecting with families that you've already had relationships with through the years. But if you're looking at a high school teacher that has 120 students over different sections, trying to make sure each kid is getting to the meeting, getting into the Schoology course or whatever, that's a lot of effort on the teacher's part to track too. So nobody has the recipe of what's the right way to do it.
And it's got to be difficult too. Special education students are very much into routine and structure, and the same thing, right? Like they have their routine and that's the routine and the structure. And I know that for a lot of them, being out of that routine when things change, like especially big changes at a time, I know like the transition to summer and transition to a lot of things can really throw them off. That's got to be extremely difficult in this time, because you're also throwing a whole new routine. They're having to do school, but not in the normal setting that they're used to with routine. But the one cool thing I have seen, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, I've kind of seen almost, especially as you talk about the older kids, right? Middle school, high school age students almost have a different type of connection with their teacher, because they're seeing them not in that normal, this is the teacher, they're at school. They almost see them as human beings too, because now you're seeing them on a webcam, just like you would your normal friends. They're at their home. Yes, they're at their home. Their dog is barking, just like, their kids are running up and they're having to deal with that too. I've heard from a lot of them that, a lot of parents, I will say, that their kids almost talk about their teachers in a different regard now. Now it's more of them as a human being instead of just them as a teacher. And I remember as a kid, that was the weirdest thing, is anytime I saw my teacher outside of school, like at the grocery store, you're like, oh, this is weird. Like, this is out of the element. You're my teacher. I shouldn't, this is kind of weird. But now I think that whole dynamic has changed. Is that for the better or for the worse? I see it as a good thing, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's a respect level there that needs to be maintained where, they are the teacher, you're the student. Is that harder to maintain when you're doing digital classes?
I think there's both. So I've seen examples where, for my daughter, for example, her teacher is so authentic. She's trying to give a video instruction, a screencast or just a video direction, and her cats are climbing on her, and, she's doing this, and it makes her feel like this is a real person who's doing the best they can in their situation. So I'm in a situation like that. So it helps the kids relate. I think the other point is sometimes it's a little too casual. So I heard a story of a high school teacher. One of the students wasn't connecting regularly and they're missing out. So they reached out directly and got a Google Meet video one-on-one with the student. The student showed up without a shirt, hey, how's it going, Nathaniel? What's up? And the teacher's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mr. Lindley. Go put a shirt on. Come back when you're ready to be a student. Like, we don't have this kind of relationship. So it's, you get that. But what I'm also afraid of is the kids who don't have a quiet space in their room or house. They don't have the right technology to connect, or their internet is less than or none. And that's where it's much, much harder for them to keep up. And so that inequity that we already see in schools in the classroom is only going to get wider and harder to bridge.
The other issue that we're seeing is, especially working with young adults or adults, is increase in depression and suicide, and also faculty that may be picking up on any kind of domestic or physical abuse. And so there are real issues as we all are working, and some of these young adults are working in very small environment. Their apartments are very small. There, could be 2 or 3 kids and a mother and a father and a grandmother. And so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for them to get their work done. In some cases, some of the students don't even have the technology in their house, which is an issue not only here, but across the United States. They may not have really good Wi-Fi. So that's been an issue. Or they may be a lot of the college students don't have a computer, even a Chromebook. They may be relying on their, smartphone, and sometimes it doesn't work for when you're doing online learning. And so we've had to provide, computers and laptops for students. So, we have, as faculty, we need to be vigilant because we're coming into people's homes now, and there's a lot of other factors that are playing a part in whether students are successful or not, or picking up on mental health issues as well.
Yeah, we took for granted that our teachers all had good internet at their house. And so then quickly we discovered who didn't and who,
right.
And like, I'm trying to connect to my husband's phone through a hotspot and trying to do a Zoom meeting with my kids. And it's like, oh,
they may have had internet. It just may not have been enough internet. Right.
So I've done a lot of consulting in the last couple of weeks for neighbors and friends who are like, oh, it's not working. What should I do? Should I switch providers? Should I get a new router? Fortunately, in our area, the ISPs, we have CenturyLink and Xfinity, have been very fast, very quick to respond and put in new installs or fix or upgrade. So within a week or so, most of the people I've worked with have gotten their home internet, because I've got 5 people in the house all trying to teach and take class, which is not normal.
Right.
Brian, you teach graduate level, is that?
Yeah, and undergrad and undergrad.
And so do you feel like but you do it online to start with. Did you mostly online?
Mostly.
Did anything change? I mean, like you would think on the surface, you go like, oh yeah, it's the same thing, but has it been, or has it been a little different?
It's not. And I've actually, I'm a pretty flexible instructor. I actually changed my curriculum a bit to give my students who are teachers what they needed, because some of them didn't know what to do or didn't have the tools. So I try to incorporate more practical things that they can do with their students as they were providing instruction, because this happened really fast. Some of the teachers may have had a day or two to kind of plan and get into it, but they didn't have enough training to really do it as effectively as they wanted. So I kind of shifted my instruction to talk about different apps and strategies, and to give them some new tools that they can use with their students.
Yeah, I go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's what. So my wife is a professor too at the local university here, and she teaches graduate occupational therapy students.
Okay.
And she really said, because she came into this, though she just got into this probably within the last year or two as an adjunct professor, and so she's really fresh, right? So she doesn't come in with any past way of doing it, but she said even her having to shift, she found that more engaging, almost Socratic method of teaching, right? Having them like question, answer, having them present. I was so shocked. Like she would be teaching, and I know she would be teaching. She's on her laptop, and she's not talking very much. She's like, no, I had each student come and present on a certain topic, and just finding different ways to keep them just even that much more engaged. She goes, because they're going from having just my class online to all of their classes online. Yeah. She goes, so before it wasn't that hard to keep their attention, right? They're used to this. Here's my one class this week. I got to focus online. Now it's, gosh, I've been sitting in front of this computer all day. I got to do something different. And I've been in kind of awe watching that, and like, oh man, it's just so different. And then seeing how the kids respond. I asked her, I'm like, okay, so I see all the pranks everyone's playing. Like, did your kids play any pranks on you? And she goes, no. She even told him at the end. So her class just ended. She goes, I'm kind of disappointed. You guys didn't pull any funny pranks. I expected better of you. And they all got a good laugh out of that. But it's been a very interesting time. Because what was curious to me is that she's just so new to this, and she even had to change her ways, and she's only been doing it for 2 years. She's done one in class in person, and then one online, and the difference between the two was pretty drastic.
Yeah,
and that's what the oldest students you can get, right? Graduate students are, they're adults. You're teaching adults, so obviously way different than teaching any other kids, but because some of these kids had kids. So these guys, we think of as kids, they're dealing with stuff at home too, just different struggles.
I could have stuck, directly to the syllabus, but I don't think I would have given them what they really needed now. And I think that's the difference. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Sticking to the syllabus wasn't going to work.
Anyone who tried to do that is just met with disappointment.
Yeah.
Just
I guess that was my point to you, Brian, was even though you were already online and it would seem that, okay, we can just kind of continue because we're already doing this. Online learning for in the world that was connected in a different way, all of a sudden changes when it's online learning, and everything behind them has changed.
Yes.
I think the teachers, Nathaniel, what you've witnessed is teaching was one thing, but when the teaching changed to being home, and then we added in there's also a spouse there, and there's also dogs. I can't believe how many dogs get in the get in the camera. But the whole pressure changed, right? And so it kind of threw everything off. Let me ask the two of you: have best practices been starting to filter their way to the top? And is anybody capturing these things? Like, we're almost done with the school year for the most part, at least here in the United States. We're finishing up. Most people finish up sometime in May. Right. We're going to go into summer, right? Is anybody capturing? Do you guys feel like there's a system to capture these best practices? If we have to do this again in the fall, are we going to be in the same boat, Brian? Are you seeing anything along those lines?
I'm sure it is being done, or teachers are reflecting on it. I know I reflect on what I do, and hopefully can bring that into the next course. It's been a lot. There's been all kinds of communities that have, come up, helping teachers with this, dilemma of how to teach online. So I think they're being captured on Twitter, being captured in Facebook groups, being captured. I just, it would depend, I guess, on the local school district.
Yeah.
Well, and that was kind of to follow up. My question was more of, okay, so how much of this stuff that teachers are doing, talking about best practices, how much of this is directed by the district? Like, hey, here's what you should be doing. Here's the tech you should be using. Here's how you should present it. And how much of it is really just left up to figure it out and do the best thing possible? Like, is there a mix there? How many of them are providing, like, is the tech just use Zoom, use this, here's your credentials, or are they kind of left to decide how they want to do it?
Well, there's two things that you're asking about. One is the teaching strategy and the pedagogy of how do you structure your delivery and your content and your pacing and your scope. And one is what tools do you use to do it? So my area is much more in the tools part of it, whereas Brian works more in the pedagogy and the styles and the tech also, because that's his area. But some things are organically growing in terms of what works and doesn't work. So we found in our high school, especially, there's a mix of, they have to have a mix of what we're calling synchronous and asynchronous learning. So it is not going to be successful if you say, okay, from 9 to 9:45, I have my English class, and 9:55 to 10:45, I have science, and I just sit and watch a Zoom lecture, hour after hour. That's not going to work at all. So the teachers are really finding ways to deliver some content asynchronous. Watch this, do this worksheet, read a thing, get some feedback in the, LMS, the Schoology or the Moodle form. Then this day, we're going to have an hour session together to discuss it. And I'm seeing breakout groups. We're not going to get the whole 30 kids together, 20 kids. We're going to do groups of 5. And here's your schedule. So like my daughter may have a morning meeting at 8, but then on Tuesday, she has a small group work at 9:30, which is 4 kids. So the teacher can really listen to the 4 children at a time. So it's really a mix that way. But in terms of best practices and things, the teachers are working together to figure out what's working. And so one thing that's actually happened tomorrow is a bunch of teachers in the Minnesota area, higher ed and K-12, are doing an online summit, the Minnesota Distance Learning Summit. And it's all free sessions, no registration, no sponsors, just pick a topic, join the Meet or the Zoom, and talk with each other. And so I'll put that link in the chat.
Okay.
It's an opportunity for districts that are smaller or not as connected to, a metro area or a PLN to hear from each other. Oh, I use this app. Oh, I could learn some few things that makes using this particular tool better, or a strategy that works. So I know there's other teachers and educators in the chat, but everyone's welcome to join those. And it's a community. The one thing I like about working in education is there's not the competitive territorial nature of it. So if I'm doing something well, I'm going to tell everyone about it. And then hopefully down the road, I'll have a question and they'll help me. It's much more of a share. Help me out. I have a problem. And not you can't know my secrets because I'm really good at this.
Yeah. So it sounds like tomorrow's almost like an ed camp kind of activity online.
Yeah. Well, the governor of Minnesota, when he said last week that schools would not reopen before the end of the year. So we were all waiting for him to say it. He said it. And he's done a great job of being measured and clear. And this is why, this is how, So when he said it's done, he declared that tomorrow, May 1st, and Monday, the 4th, are no student school days across the state, which gave the teachers 2 days to breathe, to regroup, and plan out the rest of the 4 weeks, 5 weeks of the school year. So a lot of them are taking that time of not having to be in front of a class or do things to kind of take a rest and regroup, because they've got all of May to keep going.
Yeah, we our Governor Murphy here in New Jersey hasn't yet said that, but I suspect he does. It's a little early because we go through the middle of June, so I think he's just kind of stringing it out just a little bit longer. But I don't think we'll go back. I do not think we'll go back.
It seems like some states are definitely handling it better than others. Nathaniel, it's so funny that you're also from Minnesota. My sister's up there studying. She's in the Minneapolis area, and she's learning to be a Montessori teacher. So she was actually just getting ready to start doing her rotations around the schools, and she was just telling me everything that the governor and everyone has done up there, or statewide. I mean, they have just been on top of the game. It seems like from day one, at least in terms of having a directive, having a direction, getting everyone in solidarity, right? Like, we're all doing this. This is the direction we're going. Is that true? I mean, has that been, it's from an outsider's perspective, from someone from a different state, it feels like you guys have been on top of day one.
I think so. I think, I think it's the best it can be. It's not great. When we were told originally in mid-March, when they said, okay, schools are closing, it was like, whoa, wait. And like someone said earlier, it was like a fire drill. What do we need to get out of the building so that we can get it into the homes? So 6th through 12th grade, they had take-home devices, so that was less of a challenge. As K-5, all the devices they use are in the building. So how do we, in an organized manner, get these devices out of the building to the families? Who needs them? Who doesn't need them? What type it is? Is it going to work? Do we check it out? So that was chaotic those first few days. And then my tech department's been playing catch up ever since, checking out devices for those who I thought my kid could get by using a Kindle, but it's not working with the app right. And now I think I need an iPad. Okay, we're going to get an iPad because you're in this, so we've been doing 5 to 10 a day of checkouts. So families will do a curbside drive up, check out a device, a Chromebook or an iPad. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we actually do deliveries for families that can't get to the building to pick one up. But wow, that's a huge challenge. Like you can't expect the kids to do online learning and work without a device, and mom's phone isn't going to cut it.
Right.
Yeah. We're a gadget show. Normally we're talking about gadgets, right? That's what we're doing. One of the questions I wanted to ask both of you, and Nathaniel, you've kind of alluded to this, but now that we know what we know, yeah, right, we've been doing this for 8 weeks, let's say, and we know a few things. We think about the technology that's out there. What could we be doing different, or what have you seen work differently or well or better or changed with a gadget or with just a piece of hardware or the technology? Let me give you an example, just so you kind of know what I'm talking about. Twice, Tony brought it up in the chat room, and I've heard this, I think, on Saturday mornings, Ask the Podcast Coach, when I do that show. Somebody had said the school district has put Wi-Fi hotspots on their buses, and they're driving their buses out during the day, running to areas where the internet is not good, and assisting students by turning on those hotspots so students can then at least have some Wi-Fi in poor neighborhoods where they may not have it at all, right? And that's been a way of kind of adapting, getting on a mobile, that's kind of the Elon Musk model in some ways. It's super low tech, but it's what the district had. Like, we have buses, we have bus drivers, we have Wi-Fi hotspots. How do we make that kind of work like it was different? Have you guys seen any examples or thought through this at all to say, hey, in this new world a little bit, we're going to talk about the fall here in a second as we think about just thinking ahead to the future, but you seen any of those kinds of things change?
I think Outstate has done more of the bus central location. The more rural cities where there's not a public library, there's not other resources. We're in a suburb and there's resources around that have Wi-Fi accessible. Xfinity has made their, if you go around and you see Xfinity Wi-Fi, they've made that free. You don't have to have a Comcast Xfinity account to use that. So your neighbor may have it and you can use theirs. But we've done a lot of hotspot checkouts. And what's so surprising is just the families that we thought we had taken care of during the year. We had a huge increase in requests once distance learning started. But yeah, some outstate places have done that. I know St. Paul, which is a big district in our state, I think they checked out something like 17,000 hotspots. Wow. Just tons. And that's a dense, more urban area. But if you've got several people in the family all trying to connect, it's hard to do that. So that's the biggest challenge really is the internet access from my point of view. And we're really lucky. I'm in a metro that has 2 choices, that if you can pay for it, but you don't even have those choices if you go farther out state. So that's the biggest challenge from my point of view.
Brian, anything have you seen?
No, I mean, I think Comcast Xfinity has stepped up to the plate and turned those hotspots on for students to take advantage of if it's in that building or, but I haven't really seen anything else or heard of anything else. But I mean, I know there's talk amongst the IT at the college, for purchasing hotspots to be able to give to students who may not have, the connectivity at home. It is an issue.
Some districts have resorted to buying iPhone 7s with hotspot capability because they can't get hotspots. You can't, you know, 3-week wait.
Refurbs, right?
Yeah.
Refurbs on those. Yeah, then there's plenty in the market.
Just put a data plan on them.
No, it's a good. See, I love that ingenuity, like thinking outside of the box. Nathaniel, you're on the hardware side. What's held up so far, and what hasn't? You guys, I think your Chromebooks.
Yeah.
You were talking about Kindles, iPads are out there. Are you seeing any trends of things that are doing better than others, or some things that aren't doing well at all? What have you learned from hardware?
We're a big Chromebook district, you know, and so one of the things I've always liked about it and talked about is the security and the control of the experience. So all the students that have district Chromebooks checked out, I can go ahead and say, make sure the camera and the microphone are always allowed on meet.google.com. So then we don't have to take all the support calls saying, I can't get my camera to work because you didn't go up to the little window and click allow and stuff. So I have the ability to kind of keep the experience consistent and reliable. They're always logged into the right account. They're always getting the updates. You know, the iPads have been good, but it's sort of hit and miss because if you have an older one, it doesn't support iOS 13 and then it can't run this app. And then you have privacy settings. They're generally used in our younger students where they're attending through Seesaw and some other controlled experiences. But you know, I've always said the Chromebooks have been a great tool for us. As for the teachers, they use a variety of things, mostly Windows laptops, especially in secondary because they're jumping between different things. But then a lot of our staff, we sent them home with Chromebooks so that they can keep up with the tools and connections.
Yeah. At the college level, it's all, you know, we're pretty much, I mean, some of the faculty issued Windows laptops, but, you know, most of the faculty have Macs, mix of Windows, you know, so they're using whatever they own individually. Yeah. But it's, you know, again, some of the students come from, you know, urban areas and where they can't afford high-end computers. Some are coming Chromebooks, but like I said, a lot of them rely on their smartphone.
Yeah.
This is one of the times where, you know, you think about the school buses that are parked around. As a tech guy, I'm like, okay, do I order an extra Unify access point and post to my next door that my front yard is a free Wi-Fi zone, right? Good Wi-Fi. I put out some lawn chairs, some tables, and anyone who, for some reason in our neighborhood doesn't have internet, you know, come hang out in our front yard, and you can at least have access to the internet. And I got more than enough speed here that I don't use. They could definitely, you know, utilize some of it, and of course, then the tech fun side is okay, playing with like bandwidth caps and doing all the fun stuff on the side.
It was kind of interesting. I was approached to try this platform that actually used a smartphone. The CEO approached me, and he actually developed a platform using, you know, not even smartphones, just because he was doing a lot of work in Africa, and they needed to move information and concepts and ideas, and so he developed a platform to basically, you know, do online learning through texting, and so. Gave me access to it. It was kind of interesting because what would happen, you know, me as the professor, instructor, I set up all the information, and then every morning at 10 o'clock, you'd get a chunk of information that I developed, my students would get, and then they'd be able to respond in the text message, and you could put a link and a graphic. So it was kind of interesting. Some of my students enjoyed that, the fact that it was different and that it was presented every day at that time. They could expect, you know, a chunk of information.
And it's a more of a lightweight delivery, you know, text message.
Exactly.
Can work on very limited cellular connection.
Yeah. So the company is, what's the company name? Let me see if I can get that. It's called Arist, ARIST. That's the company name, and I believe they are giving schools the opportunities to, you know, kick the tires to use it. So it's kind of interesting, another perspective on doing some online learning but using texting.
Let me ask you guys this question as we think about the fall, because I think there's a lot of questions, and I'm not going to ask you, are we going back or not? Because nobody knows at this point, right? We don't know. But as we think about, say we go in, I mean, if we go into a fall and school's back to normal, what do you think changes, or does anything change? So let's cover that scenario first. We get back to fall, we're back in school, kids are coming, it's just like it was before. Nathaniel, is your world different for some reason, or do you guys do you kind of just go back to normal?
It's hard to predict.
Yeah.
You
said the pre-show, you guys have gone through all the iterations. It's kind of why I'm asking this question.
We're really trying to dream up, okay, if this happens, this is how we need to approach it. And if, situation A, B, and C. And right now, my gut is telling me it's going to be different, even if it can be everyone. If we can have all the students and teachers back in the classroom as normal in September, which I don't expect, it's going to feel different.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm looking forward to is a recognition on everyone's part, the parents, the students, and the teachers, of the value and the benefit of being in a classroom with a teacher. So prior to this, we were getting a lot of feedback of like, well, if I can do flipped education and I can deliver a video to my kids and they can watch these YouTubes and send me comments, why do we need to be in the class? So there was a lot of that discussion the last several years. Well, now we're finding out. And I'm hoping that really makes the benefit of school and relationships and being together positive, recognized and then valued. My guess is that we're going to have a hybrid. We're going to have some days where we don't have students, or we're going to have some students on one day and some students on another day. It's going to be really hard on the teachers because they're going to have to keep growing and changing. And so if a teacher's been set on, well, I always do it in this way and I do it in this order and I do this unit, they're going to have to adjust. I just can't imagine it's going to be business as usual in September. Maybe in 2 years it might be. But
yeah, so I mean, right now we're like getting ready to do like boot camps to make sure faculty could be up and running in a heartbeat. Right now, all the summer classes are online, definitely. We don't know what's happening with the fall. And so, our IT people are doing tremendous amount of training on using Moodle and how to organize it, and also the pedagogy that goes along with it. So, and I imagine that, might be some reflection too, where we can begin to take some of the programs that we, typically do on campus and move it all online, which then makes it gives other students even across the different states the opportunity to register for courses as well. But it's kind of interesting because a lot of students come to our campus because they want that classroom experience and interaction with the faculty. So if you gave them the option, even though it's easier for many of them, to go online, they would say, I'd rather come to class every week and interact with you and the other students in the class.
Yeah, I'm curious, Brian, a little more of your familiarity with higher ed. Everyone took the end of the year as like, okay, we just got to get through it.
Right.
And what I've been hearing is that finals and the way they're delivered in the circles I'm in has been haphazard. So some professors are like, you got 24 hours, here's the information. It's an ungoogleable test. Like using Google doesn't help you show me your knowledge, and have been flexible. Others have said, here's the 2-hour window that it has to be done. You can only do it in this time, in this way, and that's it. And the impact of that is that if all the kids from a university or college are spread out, if I'm in a time zone that's close, it's probably convenient. If I'm in Hawaii or Singapore and I'm trying to attend my international class and I'm in a 12-hour difference. So higher ed is going through the same struggle, I would presume, of and how do we deliver and what's quality and what's not quality.
And there are, like Quality like we're a member of Quality Matters for online training and things of that sort. But I mean, we haven't done this yet, but I'm sure we're going to look at, there are third parties that are basically companies that will basically proctor examinations online and certify that you were the one who took the test, whether they have a webcam watching you, supervising you. So there are a couple of companies that will, do that proctoring, for high stakes, either exams or testing. So we are beginning to look at that for final exams. We have some nationally accredited programs like physician assistants. And so when you do finals and things like that, you want to make sure that, Jim Jones is taking the test and they're not calling in their brother who's a physician and everything else, so that I'm sure that's in the future.
High stakes.
High stakes testing. Yeah. I mean, years ago, I did some certification on Adobe products, and I had to basically, take my watch, leave my smartphone, put it in the locker, and walk in, and they took a picture of you, So I think it's it's definitely going to happen online too, where these companies are going to crop up that do, distance proctoring and certifying. Yeah,
it's interesting. I'm very curious to see what the enrollment looks like at colleges and universities in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a graduating senior and I was going to go to a school and residential, but I don't know if they're really going to have residents. So do I take a gap year? Do I try to do online? Do I risk it?
Or do you go to an online school that's known for its online? Like,
yeah. So Phoenix,
there's a flood. Well, or there's a flood.
Governor University, there's Governor, there's
New Hampshire, all those.
Yeah.
I mean, like if I can go to a school that has a reputation as a really good online school, and I'll transfer my credits, there could be a rush this fall of my daughter who's going to be a senior next year.
Right.
So we're in this boat, and she's definitely committed to the school because of the program that's there. So she doesn't really want to go anywhere else. She can finish online if she has to. She's got some questions about it as well. She has a photography class that she have to figure, out. She's like, Dad, I don't like, I would have checked out a camera from this. I'm like, we'll get you a camera. It's not that big of a deal. But she did mention to me, one of her friends said to her, hey, if we go 100% online in the fall, I'm going to fill in the blank or whatever the school was, because they have a better online program. They'll accept our credits. And why would I not finish out in a school that's better at it than her school?
Yeah, we have a college called Edison College, and everything is online, and you can also put together your own bachelor's degree. They give you credits for life experience, and they're doing tremendous amount of marketing now and advertising. I suspect that enrollment will be down anywhere from 10 to 20% in the fall, and just like you said, I would say that, a lot of students will take a gap year, or they'll do, they'll take some online courses at a community or junior college and see what happens the following year.
Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they look and see, okay, I'm paying $400 a credit hour at Oklahoma State.
Right.
I can go to Shawnee, Shawnee Community College at $75.
Right. And take my basic, writing class or chemistry, something
right.
Like
and before that didn't make any sense because I was on campus already.
Right.
And you just wouldn't do that. But today, all of a sudden, that's kind of a real environment. Nathaniel, it sparked off something you said in the pre-show to me just about this idea of all these different scenarios. I'm going to make this statement. I just want you guys to kind of respond to it. One of the things I think it's a shame is we go into the fall and it's uncertain. And maybe it's going to be a hybrid. You said, maybe some students won't even want to come back. So we open up the school and there's parents who are like, yeah, I don't really want to send my kids, to be honest. And we have some parents who are like, go. Yeah. Some parents who are like, stay, right? I think we miss a real opportunity this fall. We've made some progress in this idea of kind of emergency-based learning. Like this is what we're in, right? We're in a flat out emergency. It's not a snow day. It's not even an extended snow day. Like we're in a full pandemic emergency. I think it'd be a shame if we didn't use the fall as another opportunity to try again. Like regroup. What did we learn? What worked? What didn't? Get the teachers some education, allow the districts to retool a little bit, and then say, okay, do over. Let's go into the fall knowing we've got these kinds of that this is going to be a possibility. How would we do it again? Because I don't think this is going to be the last time something like this is going to happen. And I think we'd be crazy not to learn from this and try it again. Nathaniel, you're in the trenches. How do you respond to that statement?
Well, I'm curious, other people's opinion, but if I step way back and if I ran the zoo, which is a great Dr. Seuss book. But if I ran the zoo, one of the complaints over the years has always been, oh, the schedule, oh, the calendar. I wish it could be more flexible. I wish we could have more time for kids that need this support and, accelerate over here. And I wish it wasn't always based on what your age was and which grade or which class you were. So I wish it was more flexible so that the kids who are accelerated but younger can take classes with older students. And, so that's always been a frustration of the structure of a typical K-12 institution.
Yeah.
So if that's been our frustration, and the train went off the tracks 4 weeks ago, maybe this is an opportunity to redesign what our typical K-12 institution looks like. So maybe the calendar is not so important. We're maybe not stuck to an agrarian September to June calendar for school. Maybe we're not stuck to a 6-7 hour day. Maybe not all teachers have to be in the building every day. Maybe not all students have to be in the building every day. So that's kind of my just musing of what could it look like if you started over in some ways. Mm-hmm. And so some kids actually have benefited from this distance learning because going to class was the challenge for them. Mm-hmm. Being in a class with 20 some kids was the anxiety producing stress. And so being able to step back and participate at their own speed and pace during the day has been a benefit for some kids. So what are we learning from that? I don't think things will change that dramatically, but in my dream world, that's where we would look. And you're working more towards what are your skills? What are your interests? What is the time that you can allocate to do this, and how do we help the teachers be flexible enough to do that? If I was going to run the world and start over, I would say, okay, all summer students are not in class, but the teachers are. Give the teachers a paid summer and give them time to develop flexible curriculum, delivery, pacing, in the anticipation that in the fall, it will be some mix of instruction. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, that's going to meet with a lot of resistance, but that's kind of like, if I could dream up what it would look like, that's one of my ideas.
Right. Yeah, I've always thought too that it should be a 12-month position with like maybe 3 weeks off or something like that. So you could do that professional development that needs to be done. I mean, things are changing so quickly, especially in technology. It is just like when I think about, well, I've been in education 30 years. When you think about the technology I had 30 years ago and what I can do now, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah.
We couldn't have done this. We couldn't have done what we've done this year or this month as well, even 5-10 years ago. This would have been impossible.
Impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we actually kind of dodged a little bit of a bullet there. I was kind of thinking, that same thing 5 or 10 years ago. What a disaster this could have potentially. And I mean, it's been difficult. I don't want to make any light of it. It has been really difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. But it has been manageable. And the fact that it's funny, we've been podcasting now, coming up in December. Home Gadget Geeks is 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing this kind of learning, this podcasting, this community learning. It could be a class. We could teach a class this way. Many do, right? Mm-hmm. And we've been doing it for 10 years. We're in an environment now where teachers are beginning to think, if I ran my class like a podcast, and if I had groups, if I had discussion groups, and if I taught it once and allowed them to watch it or listen to it, whatever works for them in a time that fits. And then we have times where we meet together, meetups. And, all of a sudden, like our podcast infrastructure starts looking a little interesting. You start kind of going, and it's not the perfect schoolwork, and it maybe doesn't work for high school kids all the way, but there's some clues to it, I think. And I think some teachers have kind of caught on like, oh, hey, wait a minute, not just recording to YouTube and leaving it, right? That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a consistent education-based, interesting conversations, get the dialogue going, take that to a Facebook group or take that to a Discord. I mean, I manage 8,000 certified coaches around the world every day through social structures that are really education structures, mm-hmm. right? I mean, it's a really a great way kind of for them to learn. So we think fall, any other thoughts, gentlemen, on things? Nathaniel, you had that was a great little, like, if I could be president speech there and change things. Well, maybe president's too much. Maybe the superintendent, but no, a great speech. Brian, anything you'd add as we think about fall? Anything you would add to that?
I would imagine that there should be a tremendous amount of summer development work in preparation for the fall, because some doctors are predicting that the fall could be just as bad, if not worse. And so I suspect that a lot of effort will be put in to reflect on what worked, and also to have some boot camps where teachers are refining what they're doing and figuring out what the best thing is, getting ready for the fall to be online. Or hybrid. We might be in school for a little while and then be out of school for a while too. Yeah.
It's scheduled to have Chris Nesi, and this is kind of his area of expertise as we think about the EdTech space and the kind of the work that he is doing. Wanted to hear from that. We'll have to reschedule him and have him back on, but I think I heard both of you say, I think it's a summer of opportunity. I don't think the fall is a return to normal. No. From what you guys are saying. And then I think for a lot of educators, it's a step back, and hopefully this is happening at all levels, not just not just the teachers, but at the administration levels, to say, okay, let's take a step back, and we've got to do some serious retooling. That may not necessarily mean sending everybody back to school, but making some tweaks, right? Yeah. Kind of based on what we learned.
The other issue we're having is that we place teachers in schools to be student teachers, and so how do we structure their activities, because they have to put a certain number of hours in. So a lot of them were thrown into doing online instruction as student teachers. Yeah. So it's something we really have to reflect on in our curriculum. Is we get teachers set up to teach in classrooms. We now really need to we need to teach them how to teach online, and which is another thing we really need to look at.
That's a great point. That's a great point, that your teacher education program has got to have a new lens to it.
Yes.
Of in and outside of class instruction. One of the challenges, okay, all these teachers are teaching from home, but what happens when they have a sick day? How do you get a sub for a distance teacher? So what we've seen is a lot more collaboration. Right. So a third grade team will kind of float each other through days that are easier and harder, rather than this is my set of 30 kids and don't ever cross lines between classrooms.
Yeah. See, okay, what you just said there, Nathaniel, I think is key, is completely rethinking the structure. So instead, if you have 3 teachers who are teaching third grade, that third grade becomes a unit now, like it's not divided by walls, right? And you can divide the load and have teachers sharing that. And if one needs to be out, you can do that kind of smoothly because you're team teaching, right? In that, where maybe that wouldn't have worked before.
When we've had that structure in schools before, so especially in middle schools, you'll see a house concept. Right. I'm the University of Minnesota team, and this four sections of 7th grade, we're a team, and we cross. I'm the social studies teacher, and I'm the science teacher. So you have that subgroup of structure already. Yeah. It's just even more important now. Right. To share the load among the teachers and to share the expertise.
Well, and what I'd love to see, and especially in Chris's area, where he's doing a podcast that really teaches, it highlights some of the best things that's going on, some of the best tech that's happening. I really actually think that's a good model for teachers over the course of the summer. I would love to see a bunch of best practice web podcasts pop up where teachers could subscribe, take your one-day model that's going on for the teachers to come and do this, what are you calling that? It's not a virtual
Minnesota Nathaniel. Distance Learning Summit.
Yeah. The summit. There we go. Yep. Great name for it. To have these summer programs for teachers who could subscribe, I'd love to see a bunch of podcasters pop up from teachers who start sharing that, right? Is that happening?
Yeah. What I was going to say is that I've learned a lot from you all in this podcast journey of how you get good sound and audio, and you set up your space and all those little tips and tricks, because now the teachers are trying to figure it out on their own, and we're trying to help them. And one of the things I talked about earlier, I think pre-show, is that I'm trying to impress on people that are online all day in meetings. So I'm on meetings like almost all day, and we use Microsoft Teams a lot internally. And then our students and teachers use Google Meet a lot. So we're not a Zoom district. But when you're online all day, having your sound and your presentation to be as good as it can be or reasonably makes a difference for your audience more than for you. So knowing that the sound is high quality and good, it's less strain on the listener. It's less fatigue. Now, we all get tired of doing online meetings now because it's not a novelty anymore. It's not the best way to communicate with people. So we're getting adjusted to that. But, you know, helping the teachers set up with the tools they need to be better delivery and better communication as best as it can be would be a good technical challenge.
Yeah.
Nathaniel, do you see the school district footing the bill for some of that equipment to make the home?
Well, we've already bought a lot of headsets.
Okay.
So we'll get the headsets with a boom mic.
Okay.
Which is certainly not the same as what we're using here
Right.
with the microphone and that. And I've tried a lot of things, and they're not great, but they're way better in terms of isolating the sound and clarity. And I've noticed a lot of the headsets have this sort of restricted range. It's not as deep, but it's clear and it's easy to understand. And so we bought a lot of those and got them out to teachers.
That's great.
So they have that, but not everyone. And then we've had a lot of laptops that have had to come back and get checked out again. And so that's a challenge. And some teachers have their own tech they're trying to use, and some of it's good and some of it's not. The interesting thing, this is, if we go into the technical side, we use Google Meet a lot, which Google made freely available to schools for the summer with the enterprise tools with recording and analytics and large groups. They have a quality admin tool where you can look at individual meets or sessions and look at the analytics of what network congestion, what was the audio, who came in and left, who screen shared, which computers were running high CPU and low CPU. And so when I get feedback, you know, I'm trying to do Google Meet and it's just not working and the audio's breaking up, I can go into those analytics and say, okay, well, here's what I'm seeing. You didn't have, your computer's running at 90%. What you've got to shut everything down and then just do the Meet. You know, I don't know what kind of computer you have, but that's the analytics.
Right.
You know, so I'm able to help troubleshoot a bit even through that tool to say, no, it doesn't look like your network. Or flip side, your network congestion's really high. Well, I was outside on my patio. I guess the Wi-Fi is not good out there. Well, okay. So, but they've never had to do that before because we've taken care of it in the building. That's our job, so that they don't have to worry about it. Now they're learning along with us.
Well, in that sitting on the porch out on the patio is kind of a cool, sexy thing that, you know, it's like, oh, I'm home now, I can do this. And then you're like, yeah, but it's having like your house isn't built for that. Like you don't have a hotspot on if you had a hotspot on your patio, that would be perfectly fine.
I have one in my garage, don't you?
Yeah. Doesn't everyone have Wi-Fi access points just littered across the house?
Kyle was asking, can you share the model of the headset you're using? Do you know? And then while you're looking that up, we use the Jabra brand. So these are really popular right now. They're hard to find. But there's a 40. So there's a 40 and a 60 series. The 40s are, I think, and there's a 20 series too, and you can do mono and dual on those. But when I get Mike, I'm gonna ask you this too. When I'm working with my partners at work and they get on and they have a terrible connection, I'm like, the very first question is, do you have a headset? And they know, like some of them now know I'm going to ask. So they come on, they don't come on without it. In fact, if I call them, I see them scrambling. They're like, just a second, I'm trying to get my headset on because I know, like you said, there's a fatigue factor in it. If we're doing this it's okay every once in a while, right?
Oh yeah.
But if we're doing it all the time that way, after a full day, you get pretty tired. Mike, have you run? First of all, Mike, are you using this at work?
No.
Are you using? Oh,
I did, and it freaked people out. Every single time, like, whoa, I feel like I'm being like interviewed like a radio guy. Like they did not like it. So I actually have my Blue Yeti, and I have it off camera because that Blue Yeti picks up a great, it can do well without being right up in your face, but it sounds better than the mic on the board. And it has a physical mute button, which is my favorite, especially with kiddos running around. So I use that, and it can be below the camera, so they don't even know I'm using a nice mic, but it sounds good to them. But the other thing it's hard to fix is I think Nathaniel fixed it. So audio, number one, I mean, my biggest thing is we have a lot of people who have really bad echoes, and they don't realize if all it takes is just putting in headphones. It doesn't even have to be a microphone. It's just your mic on your computer, the way it's set up, is picking up what the speakers are putting out. And so that's been one. But my boss, the guy I talk with the most every single day, I probably talk to him 3 or 4 times a day via video chat, has the worst internet. And he lives in San Diego, great house. For some reason, though, his Wi-Fi or wherever he's doing. And I have sent him multiple, like, hey, here's a power line adapter. Maybe if you can't do anything, maybe this will just help, or maybe this will just help. Anything, because it is so hard. And I've started calling him on the phone more often because by the time we have to get through an hour conversation, I have probably said 10 times, sorry, I didn't catch that. You were cutting out. What'd you say?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What'd you say? And I'm just it just drives you nuts. There are these little things we've picked up on. And if you're not a tech guy or you don't know, a lot of them just don't care either. They just think, hey, everyone's dealing with these issues. But man, as the guys who know how to solve this, you just want to fix everyone's issue, right?
It's hard to bite your tongue.
It is. It's so hard to bite. I agree. Because you're can I just step in for a second? Guys, can we just pause? If that person puts in headphones and if that person turns off Wi-Fi and plugs in the Ethernet cord, we will have a much more productive meeting.
My tongue hurts from, I'm not going to bite it anymore. I just tell people, put your headset on.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have this conversation, turn your camera on because I want to see you. And, there's some who are like, I'm like, hey, is your camera working today? That's kind of how I start. Right. And they're like, oh, I didn't really. I'm like, I don't really care what you look like. I want to see your eyes. So can you turn your camera on for me? It hurts me when I'm talking to you and I can't see you. And very, very rarely does that not get them. Usually they're like, okay, and they'll turn it on and they'll be in a sweatshirt or something. You're like, look, I don't care about any of those things. I want to see your face because I'm reading your facial expressions. It's how I know when to talk and when not to interrupt, and when the point is coming across and you're agreeing with me because I see it in your eyes. And if I can't see it in your eyes, I'm not as effective. Right. And so, so a lot of people now are coming. It's taking time. I think that's the point too with the kids, the students, the teachers. I think if we go back in the fall in a similar environment, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned, and we're not going to go all the way back. It's not like we're going to go all the way back to March and kind of have to start over. There'll be some lessons learned, and some teachers will be like, okay, here's, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And we're going to get this thing right this time. Nathaniel, do you sense that from some of the teachers that you work with? I know they're just in crisis mode at the moment, but do you think a summer off and some retooling will be helpful?
I think so. I think a lot of them, they've been kind of jump started on a lot of the tools that they've been able to say, I don't need to learn that yet because I'm still got my kids in the class. So I think a lot of them are like, oh, okay, I'm going to get on board and this is going to, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Or that's kind of cool. And, a lot of our teachers, when I'm meeting with them or media specialists, they really, really miss their kids.
Yeah.
They miss their kids, and they're afraid if we come back and we'll still have to social distance, they're like, how am I going to not be in contact with my students, especially in the younger elementary? So it's hard for them, but I think they're learning ways to get feedback. They're being authentic with their students, which encourages the students to be authentic. When my daughter did her first lunch bunch meeting with her class, and they all had their picnic lunch kind of thing, and they were all checked in online and they could see each other, and the teacher led them through Simon Says. So that helped learn how to mute and when to listen. So with the younger kids, you gotta, the back and forth of dialogue is not as natural.
Right.
So we step on each other's toes here and we're adults, but that first time they were so excited to see their friends. Yeah. So
my 2 and 3-year-old went through that exact same thing. The first time they got on a Zoom meeting, it was just pure chaos. Imagine a bunch of 2 and 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
All yelling, And then there's one of the 3-year-olds saying, everyone's yelling, it's too loud, it's too loud. And he's freaking out because everyone's just talking over themselves. But they actually, after about so they do it every day, right? 10 o'clock. Log in, we'll do circle time, we'll do our thing. And they got it down to a pretty good cadence. Either that or the parents learned they needed to step in and mute the microphone. But I think the kids actually started to learn it a little bit. And that's young kids. But you know what was shocking to me? My kids didn't bat an eye at the fact that they were doing their class on Zoom. I mean, because they FaceTime their grandparents, they FaceTime aunts and uncles, their cousins. I mean, my 2 and 3-year-old, that is how they see their people, and they're so used to it. And they could probably run my wife and I's phone to do a FaceTime to call. I actually got them Amazon tablets with the kids version, and they asked, why can't, I want to FaceTime Bob and Ann. I'm like, well, this device doesn't do that. With free time, it's locked down. And they're like confused, like, no, devices, video call. That's what these do. I don't know why.
What good is this?
What good is this? Dad, you got me a defunct product. Return this to get me an iPad, please. Yeah, exactly. But it's very interesting how different age groups have adopted to whether this is weird, whether this is normal, I mean, and how it works. But, I'm interested, Brian, in psychology side of things. Real quick, I was talking about my 2 and 3-year-old. And I did get them the Amazon, kids tablet, right? Fully locked down. You can control the amount of time. And that's really the first piece of tech. I'm a huge techie. My wife is the complete opposite. And we would much prefer our kids play outside in the dirt and get dirty all day. And that's kind of the Montessori method too, right? Montessori method is more play with your hands, play with wood objects. That's the style.
Real stuff.
Exactly. Real stuff. Well, and so, but they're great with technology and they have an interest in it. So I actually gave it to them. And it was amazing how fast they just, you took that thing away and it was like you were taking away their livelihood. And the hour, because I was like, oh, this is great. It has a timer built in, so I can set it daily max. It hit that hour and it locked them out. And you would have thought the world was coming to an end. And I've never seen that reaction from them. Like, we've had to bring them in from outside, right? Hey, time to stop playing outside, come inside, time to have dinner time. And their transitions, as we call them, have been great. With technology, though, completely different. Is there a difference? I mean, is there an age where they handle that differently? I mean, obviously, I think there probably is, but is that just no? Is it just technology in general? But I was so confused why I can pull them from any other activity and they can be fine. I can pull them from the ball pit at Burger King, right? Like the ultimate kids play gym. I can pull them from that, and they whine and no, I wanted to stay, but they don't throw it. I mean, and this was just meltdown mode.
If you look at some of the research. I think the technology really gets their endorphins, and it sets the brain in a certain mode that it's very reinforcing, and that's why you're getting almost that tantrum when you're taking it away. I think it's really. I mean, you see it in middle school kids too. You get
high school,
and high school, college. Yeah. Now you got esports. The only good thing, you got esports now.
Yeah. I watch those. I'm addicted to watching esports, so I can't imagine the people do it.
It really changes the brain chemistry when they're looking at a screen, and you're seeing the impact of the sort of the chemicals flowing in the brain and giving the kids good feelings, and it's you kind of they're going through withdrawal when you take it away, literally.
I guess I didn't think about that point.
I was listening to something similar along this line, and it talked about that there's different kinds of reward, like dopamine is one, and there's others, and some are more powerful than others. So screen time, and I can't remember the details, maybe you can help me, but screen time gives you, I think they said dopamine hits of tiny rewards, kind of like gambling, lots of variable. I might get a message, I might get a Snapchat, that, which is different from I'm biking outside with my best friend and it's beautiful out. That's a different kind of reward. Does that sound right?
Yes.
That makes
sense. So our kids are not getting that.
Right. And I think, when we're outside, we're taking in sensory data from a lot of different places where basically everything is coming through the eyes, which have a tremendously large center in the brain. And so it's kind of, I think it's magnifying everything that we're taking in. Whereas when you're bicycling, you got the wind, you got other things going on, but it's not that intensity and the focus that it is when you're playing, a game or looking at a computer screen. Yeah.
That makes so much sense, because it was. And even when I was asking my kids, hey, do you want to FaceTime your Papa and Nana? And they love doing that. They love showing them all the activities. he didn't look up. I mean, it was almost like a completely different kid. These kids were just polar opposites.
Yeah, it's a real high. I mean,
it is. Yeah. Interesting. Well, according to them, the trash man took their iPads, as they call them. So I needed to do something drastic because I did not like what I was seeing. And I'll probably introduce it in lower increments or something. I mean, I think their age just wasn't ready.
Yeah, something you may want to do is just have like a timer or something, so they hear a beep and then like they know that they have 5 more minutes, like just to make that kind of fade into that transition.
Interesting. Okay, do those kind of things help?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
The other trend I want to say is that I foresee that there's going to be a lot of teachers that are going to decide to retire at the end of this year. I think for some of them, this has been overwhelming, and they just really can't, they can't balance this and the technology, and they're going to, if they were thinking about it, I think they're going to take retirement. So I would foresee that that's going to happen across the United States.
Wow.
As well.
That's really good insight, Brian. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it definitely, the education system is being disrupted.
Yes.
We are going through a massive disruption. The enterprise is being disrupted. Gallup, where I work, we've been writing a ton about this for the last 3 years. So we were a little bit ahead of this and thinking about remote workers and what the new environment. We just didn't know how fast. We didn't know how fast it was going to happen. Right. We've been talking about this. And I think the workplace is much better off than our education system. And there's still disruption in the enterprise, still disruption in business, but man, education is being disrupted in just in incredible rates. Yeah. Hey, before I wrap this, Nathaniel, let me give you one more shot. And Brian, anything else that you'd want to say in this kind of context before we could go on for like 3 hours. But anything else, any other final thoughts, Nathaniel?
No, other than, everyone just has to have a lot of patience and grace with each other.
Yeah.
Your teachers are working extremely hard to help your kid. You're working extremely hard to help your kid, and the kids are working hard, it's everyone has to be patient and kind and, forgiving when there's mistakes. So we're all doing our best to get through it, and it is what it is,
Yeah. Good thoughts, Brian. Final thoughts?
Yeah, like what Nathaniel said, I see my students that trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. And, I think, teachers are doing a tremendous job considering what they, have laid before them. And they'll continue to do a wonderful job with the kids. I think they're all trying to reach kids in different ways. I think that, I think teachers themselves need a lot of support, and they could find it in Facebook groups or even Twitter groups or whatever their PLN. I think it's really important for them to form their own community so they can reflect on their practices and get the kind of support that they need amongst their peers. And I think that's really important.
Mike, final thoughts on this? What do you think?
My final thoughts are that I hope that the education system is getting the attention it deserves right now because of all this, because I don't think anyone has had a deeper respect for what everyone is doing in the education space is doing than right now. I mean, I think we all realize, first of all, how much work you guys, but the reaction from the educational community has been faster than most businesses on how to do this, right? How do we engage our kids? How do we get going? So thank you to both of you for whatever you do, for what you do, not whatever you do, for what you guys do. And just, I hope everyone just appreciates what the whole educational community is doing. I think it's been fantastic. I've been blown away with the reaction from my boys' teachers, from my coworkers' teachers, and what the education system has been doing. And so I think everyone appreciates it. If you guys don't hear that enough, you can hear it from me. We appreciate the hard work you guys are putting in to keep our youth educated.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I echo that. Appreciate you guys. We're 4 voices in this, and there are many more than that. And this is not the be all end all of, I don't know if we solved any problems tonight, but certainly had some great conversations around it. I think, I want to end with this from a community standpoint. So as a community, we have the ability to help in this situation. Like Nathaniel, you said it yourself, you've learned a lot from just kind of hanging in this community, right? There's been a lot of discussions, and you've taught us a lot. You've come on and talked about Chromebooks, and we've learned from you, right? It's a mutual learning community. we'd miss the boat, gentlemen and ladies who are listening tonight. We would miss the boat if we didn't take some opportunities when lockdown maybe ends and we can get out of our house and maybe do some things safely together to get back into our communities and be a voice to help. Like, I think we have some of the answers to jump in here, even if it's just mentoring another teacher on technology or helping the school. Nathaniel, I'm sure there are moments when you could use a helping hand from some parents to do some things. You're going to need to bring all these Chromebooks back in. They're going to need to be cleaned and formatted and worked with, right?
He hadn't thought about that until just now. He's like, oh, jeez.
No, we've been thinking about that. It's an interesting challenge.
Yeah. I mean, there's challenges in our communities that need to be met, and I'd love to see, and I'd love to hear stories from our listeners of how they're going out and helping and being a part of it. And maybe it's not a school, but maybe it's a church, or maybe it's a civic organization, or maybe it's first responders, or, you know, I've gone on record saying if they could ever figure out, like, if you've had this thing before, if you've had the COVID and then you're now immune, if I knew that, I'd go volunteer at hospitals every weekend to just say, like, look, put me in harm's way. Like, you know, I think we can help in this case. So if you're listening to this, if you're on the road or you're at home, I don't know, your listening patterns have changed. This has disrupted podcasting too. Podcast is listening. Probably the three of you are listening to podcasts differently than you listened to them 8 weeks ago because maybe your listening patterns have changed. I'd really like you to think through the summer, like, what could I do to volunteer? What could I do to help? How could I take my talents in technology and apply them to my district or my local school or my local tech guy or whatever, right? And really kind of make a difference there. We'd love to hear those stories as they come in as well. So as you start doing this, maybe you're doing it now. Love to hear those stories. Send those to me or ping me, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. We'd love to either feature those or hear from those, or we can read them on the show. You can come on the show, talk about those kinds of things. We'd love to hear those as well. A couple reminders on our way out. One, if you want to kind of financially help what we're doing here, I don't talk about this very much, but you can go to our Patreon page, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. We have a plan out there if you want to get involved. Really jump into one of our Discord, our Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord. We got a whole bunch of different channels in there. Really great communication. We haven't forgot about you on Facebook either. theaverageguy.tv/Facebook. That's still going on out there. I kind of post the show notes, but a lot of the conversations move to Discord. If you've been hesitant to move to Discord, get past it. Like, get over on the Discord side. There's a lot of stuff going on there as well. If you want to contact me, send me an email, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. If you're on YouTube right now, do me a favor. Just if you stayed this long, I don't know, there's 10 of you. Go down and hit the like button. That actually helps on YouTube. So just go down. It's right down there. Just click on the like button and subscribe while you're there. Those things actually do help us get discovered on YouTube, so I'd appreciate that as well. Don't forget the AverageGuy.tv platform, hosted by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. If you need a site, plans are as little as $10. Christian will set you up, both web and media hosting. He basically does it all. Plans start at $10. MapleGrovePartners.com. And we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv live. If you've made it this far, chances are you're going to like to come back next Thursday. So come back. It does not quite as serious next week. We're going to talk about lawn care and technology associated. Kind of a nice break. It's been a little heavy over the last couple of weeks, and so kind of a nice break as we think about summer and doing some lawn care. And Dave McCabe will be back. He's always fun to do that as well. We want to thank you for joining us tonight, Brian and Nathaniel. Thank you for coming on as well. We'll do a little bit of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye.